AskReddit by deleted. What's the most hurtful thing someone has ever said to you? When I was younger, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. My siblings and I shaved our heads to support her. This kid told me that he hopes my mom dies and that I looked like I was in the Holocaust. She has been cancer free for 13 years, but fuck that kid. My sister had a kid in her class who held a crumpled piece of paper to his head, turned to her and said, "I look like your father." They were in 5th grade. Our dad had a brain tumor, he died of it. A year later the same kid's dad hung himself at home. That's when he apologized. Fuck those kids. When I was young, my mom said holidays are better without me. When I was young my mom saying she had to love me but she didn't like me. It was her careful specificity, and I'm adopted. F'd me up for life. I cheated on you, and the only reason I'm telling you is because I'm pregnant. Double quote. Damn, that's the exact same thing my high school girlfriend told me, and after that she asked me for money to pay for the abortion. You'll never be loved or cherished because you look like me. You will never belong anywhere. No one cares about you enough to actually be there for you. You will be a burden to everyone else, from dad to 11-year-old me after we argued about how he missed my birthday again. But looking back, I laugh because it seemed like he was projecting his own insecurities onto me. Lol. Odds are good that he absolutely heard those words directed at him from someone he admired or loved. Shame he has not dealt with that trauma. It doesn't have to be your trauma. You're a different person, different life, different options. Go on and thrive. Took my math book up to the teacher's desk with a question. I wasn't grasping it. He slams my book on his desk and asked me if I was stupid or what. Small town school about 30 years ago. If I ever run into that brick I have a few things to show and tell him. I was sure I was gonna find my stepdad and hurt him. I didn't make it my main goal but I had decided by 5th grade, after he was gone, and I considered it just granted that someday I would run into him when I was grown and I would hit him until I felt like stopping. I never did run into him until I'd moved away and then back and I was 30. Randomly spotted him in line at a Subway shop. I felt zero anger and hatred. He just looked pathetic, alone, weak, small, fragile. This big scary dude who screamed and spit and hit and scared us all and had cops concerned and checking on us even after the restraining order and divorce were final. I just got my sandwich and gave him a good long moment to see if he recognized me or wanted to make eye contact, and when he didn't, I carried on back to work. I feel like there is some sort of lesson or silver lining here. I know I felt better, and not how I expected to. Locked in the bathroom, naked. Just look at you. You're fat and ugly. Nobody will ever love you the way I do, ex-husband. He was right. I married someone who does love me, just not the way he loved me. Thank God. I'm so glad you're being treated the way you deserve. You're a stupid diaper wearing cripple and the world would be better off without you, my middle school bully. For context, I have spina bifida and suffer from total incontinence due the nerves not working right. I'll kick his ass for you. I have a daughter with an extremely complicated illness. Almost lost her to it twice when she was almost 3 and again 6 months later. In between, this was 15 years ago, I broke down and wept, being so worried about her and also how distant my wife had become from me as well. After I settled down my wife told me that me crying like that had made me less attractive. My daughter is very stable now and I've been divorced for several years. What kind of monster says that about a man hurting over his daughter? Very happy to hear you divorced that pose. I had struggled with infertility for years. At my dad's funeral my stepsister said, "I bet you feel bad that you never gave him any grandkids." I would never speak to her again. My auntie was infertile and it completely destroyed her. It's not your fault so you shouldn't be blamed. My mum once said to me, I love you, you're my daughter. But I don't like you. I would never seek you out as a friend. I was 21 and it was 40 years ago. I will never get over that, it hurt so much. As a kid I asked my brothers if they thought our mom loved me. They said they thought she loved me but she didn't like me. It was both heart-wrenching and also validating to know I wasn't imagining the mistreatment. You should do everyone a favor and kill yourself. Cut across for attention and down for results. A person who I called dad at 12 years old. My dad killed himself a few years ago. My wife one day stopped shouting at me mid-argument and said really calmly, you're the reason your dad killed himself. I walked out that day and haven't spoken to her again. I still think about what she said constantly. Edit. I wasn't the reason at all. He was on a cocktail of antidepressants and he left a note outlining some bad financial decisions and his divorce with my mum 10 years ago. So I know I'm not the reason, but I just can't stop thinking about what she said and why she said it. You're ugly and underdeveloped. I was 10 years old and to this day it still gets to me. Edit. To clear things up, this was said to me by a family friend's daughter. She was like 14. Anybody that is telling a 10-year-old that they're underdeveloped has some serious issues. My dad one time told my mom over the phone while I could hear that he didn't want a relationship with me anymore. Edit. Okay, so I definitely didn't expect that to blow up as much as it did or to receive any awards, but thank you so much guys. Don't worry, I've commented the full story below and things are a lot better now. Wow, I'm sorry, that's so selfish and shitty. Dad to 12-year-old me for forgetting to close a gate at the end of a 12-hour workday. You are a worthless piece of shit. Hey, was my dad your dad too? From my boss from my previous job, you're a headache to deal with, and I regret hiring you. I wouldn't surprise you don't give your girlfriend, friends, and family a headache. I was hired with this guy fully knowing I had little experience with the position I was hired for. I didn't lie during the interview. I had a boss once say to me, I just don't see how anyone could be so stupid to do that, after I followed the advice of our Google Ads rep when I was new to Google Ads. After what I thought was a good relationship in my 30s with my dad, I was having trouble accommodating his wife's son's wedding and my lifelong friend's wedding in the same week in 2 different states in the Northeast. I'm on the West Coast. I brought up the fact that I was having trouble and my dad tried to fight me, has never in my life been physical before, called me a narcissist, that I'm a piece of shit since I was 17, and that I'm not to talk to him ever again, and if he ever sees me again, he will kill me. I didn't even meet my stepbro until my 30s and spoke to him previously about my difficulty finding flights. Anyway, at the time of the fight I was still trying to find flights to accommodate both, but my dad telling me those things made up my mind for me. It's a shame. He's 71 and I probably will not talk to him ever again. I'm willing, but he is not. His wit. Lifelong friends win over stepbrother. Your pa sounds like he has incipient dementia. My mom denying her abuse towards me even almost a decade later has fucked me up more than I thought. She's way better nowadays, but she's still a narcissist. I'm so sorry. Parents should be guardians, not abusers. No one will ever love you. Double quote. That's the closest I ever got to actually killing myself because I truly believed these words. That's so awful. There are plenty of people who love you, so please don't pay attention to those words. My stepmom wrote me a letter when I was in my mid-20s, had 2 kids and happily married, saying I had the morals of a rally cat, I was an unfit parent and my husband should divorce me. I was literally Cinderella starting from age 5. She even locked me in a cage. That's ultra fucked. Glad you're doing so much better. If she says that stuff to you now, that means you're winning. Additionally, if she sends you another letter, you can write return to sender on it to maximize her frustration. You're just a little girl. No one likes you, no one wants you around. You're annoying, over the top and loud. Stop being so fucking annoying and maybe someone will want to be with you. Edit to add another one. It's a boy or it's abortion. I'm not raising a daughter. I miscarried 2 days later. That's awful. I'm so sorry that you were treated that way. It was the truth, but it was that I was an alcoholic. Hurt bad. It's incredibly hard to hear the first time. Like a knife to the gut. In spite of not being good looking, you are so good at studies. I don't know whether I must feel hurtful or not. That's a real low blow. People like you are a statistic. Once you fail once you'll keep on failing. Head of school when I had to repeat a year in undergrad, consequence of being naive and finding myself in a shitty abusive relationship. I refused to shake hands with him after my final performance and told him that no, I wouldn't go to graduation because I'd have to shake his hand when he asked if I was attending. Also quite enjoyed sending copies of my 3 following degree certificates and signing the letter Dr. Dart. Prick. Well done Dr. Prick. My mom told me this when I was 14, and it led to my first suicide attempt. You are a disappointment to me, and everyone who knows you. I should have just given you up for adoption. I can't imagine how hard that would have been for you. The night before my wedding my mother drunkenly told me what a horrible, selfish daughter I was. That my wedding was a fucking circus. It was tented with cafe lights, and she can't believe what an awful selfish person I am. Because I had my wedding in the state I had lived in for 6 years and none of her friends' family decided to travel to it. Oh, and she decided she would throw her own reception the next week. The reason no one decided to come to the actual wedding, which forced me to forego a honeymoon and instead travel to my hometown to attend her second reception. Followed closely for when I tried to hang myself at 11 in my closet and the rack and shelf fell instead and she told me you are too fat to hang yourself. Oh no. That's so awful. I am so sorry for what happened to you. Probably the first time my mom said have a nice life, took about 10 more disownings before I said enough's enough and cut ties. I'm still kind of bitter but have come to terms with it. She still doesn't understand why I don't wanna let her back in. Last I heard she disowned my sister, again, too. I'm so sorry. No one deserves to be treated like that and I'm sorry that you were. You're too disgusting to be my girlfriend but I own you, so I can do what I want to you. You're impossible to love. If I kill myself it will be your fault. I'm meant to be alone. I once was told by a friend from high school, at another friend's wedding, what I appreciate about you is that you just know you're not ever going to get married, and you're, like, okay with that, because I was 27 and single. She genuinely thought it was a compliment that I accepted my inability to be loved. And you can bet that bitch is going to be shocked she isn't invited to my wedding next year. You don't know trauma. You're making it up. Mom mocked me, because I thought I had PTSD from childhood trauma. Turns out, I was right. My father had dementia due to diabetic strokes. I went to visit him 6 days a week. A coworker said, I don't know why you go so often, he's not going to remember you were there. That man is so insensitive. I hope your dad's doing okay. Your dad will get to remember his love for you every day you see him. During a fight my mother called me an unwanted bastard child because I calmly asked her why she thought it was okay to scream at me in public. The whole neighborhood probably heard. I'm so sorry. A parent should never say that shit to their child. Where are your friends? You don't have any friends. My father said something similar once, after I came home from going to the movies alone. Why do you not have any friends? What's wrong with you? Nothing. The one friend I had in state at the time was working. All of my other friends were either in other states or other countries. My response was, anytime my friends meet you, They ditch me. Not untrue. I've had so many people tell me they are uncomfortable coming to my house because of him. He never asked again, feo. Looking at a picture of myself that my daughter drew. She really has an eye for detail. I can totally relate. My 6-year-old drew a picture of our little family. Looked kind of like this. Oh, I. Guess which one was me? I've lost over 60 pounds since then and no longer am a circle body in his pictures. After I was assaulted by a classmate as a teenager and obviously acting kind of down and moody at home, 24 hours after it happened, my mom looked at me with disgust in her face BC of my attitude and asked, "What's wrong with you?" She also told me I was an embarrassment to the family when I was 12 and entering my goth phase. I have minimal contact with her now as a mid-30s adult. Lol, both my parents are subpar people. As a survivor of SAR, if people keep coming on to you, then that's something you should work on. No and absolutely not. A teacher told me that with my poor handwriting, I should be working for a trash or waste disposal company. I took that comment and ended up receiving consistent tutoring for my penmanship and reading comprehension, and I'm now an English language arts teacher. Shoulder just become a doctor, they have horrible handwriting. Okay, I was gonna make a snarky comment. But after reading comments, holy fuck. I wanna give a group hug. Damn, I'm tearing up. I mean, seriously. I had some resentment against my dad for some things growing up, but feels very insignificant reading some of these things. You look like you've gained 30 pounds since you moved out. This was a month after said move. And it was only 5 pounds. That's so harsh. Yo, big shout out to OP for applying to and reassuring everyone. I noticed this too. That's so awesome and much needed. My mom told me it was my fault after SAR. I married a woman who will go to war when any child she knows is assaulted. Whole rift in the family because she won't apologize, forgive someone partially responsible and totally wrong for blaming a child for that child's assault. It's crazy how many strong women have folded and just gone, well, maybe she's a child and just didn't understand, or she always was a fast girl, I knew she was trouble, or even just didn't press charges so as not to make a ruckus. Not necessarily to me, but to my parents about me. I have a disability and several years ago a doctor tried to convince my parents that it would be best to put me in a group home and forget about me. Luckily my parents, with the counsel of my step-grandfather, decided to go against the doctor's advice. When my sister was born with Down syndrome, my parents were advised to put her in a home, forget about her and have another baby. She only passed away this year aged 58, being cared for by her family, parents and then me, her wildlife. I'm glad we never had kids. I wouldn't want them to inherit your mental problems. My ex-wife while I was in treatment for severe depression. Edit. For context. We were already breaking up after 13 years together. I'd always wanted to be a father because my own had passed away when I was very young from cancer. We spoke about having children for years. I had been struggling with depression for a few years before I started treatment, but I was attacked randomly by 4 men on the street and run over by their getaway car, which left me with acute PTSD and anxiety. During this time, my ex-wife cheated on me because I was no longer able to emotionally support her. Her saying that was in the final days of our divorce. It was only meant to hurt me because she knew how badly I wanted a family. I'm glad to be rid of her. You're lying, after saying I was assaulted. Those type of assaulters are some of the worst scum on the planet. I'm not your mother and I don't want this, a piece of art I spent a month making just for her to throw it back in my, then 8-year-old, face. Now go away. My birth giver the day I first met her. Jesus fucking Christ. It would have taken so little effort to do so much better. What a callous and hurtful person she was. I'm curious, what was the context? How were you meeting her at 8 the first time if she had no interest in it? No wonder your birth parents didn't want you, my foster mother. When I was married to my first wife, met younger friends at work and started going out on the weekends, and then one day she left before I got home from work without saying where she was or when she was coming back. I called about midnight to see if I can make sure she was alright, and she answered screaming, "What do you want from me?" I knew at that moment it was over. Sorry to hear that. Hope you're doing better now. To this day, they do not realize how hurtful what they said to me was or how it impacted my whole life. It was just luck when I fixed a stereo system my dad was trying to fix. It wasn't luck, but from that point on I felt so stupid. I quit school in the 6th grade and was self-taught on everything, so that made it worse. I went to college and got an associate's. Now, 15 years later, I'm returning to college at 35 to get an unrelated bachelor's degree. I start in September. I am not stupid and it's not just luck. Rooting for you. When I got out of the psych ward for attempted suicide, both my grandmothers said if I was going to do it, to just do it. As the love of my life was walking away, I said, "I love you." She said, "I know you do." And she was gone. 30 years ago, and she still pops up in my dreams a few times a year. Love stinks. That's sad. Hope you're doing better. You're annoying. My best friend, at the time, told me this in middle school, and it was her only reason for bullying me. Those words were the end of our friendship and the beginning of my many current insecurities. I can trace a significant shift in my personality back to a similar incident when I was 9. Not a best friend, but a family friend that was a couple of years older that I looked up to. I went from being an excitable kid to being reserved and introverted. I have a 7-year-old that reminds me so much of the kid I used to be. Admittedly, he can be quite full on sometimes, but I really hope that nobody puts out his fire.